Hey y'all, and welcome to the second video, and really the first lesson of our first unit. The previous video was just to get you into geometry, talk about some of the basics, which we will use later on, and also get you used to watching a video, taking notes, and working through the process. Our first unit is about logic, and where we'll use a lot of symbols. We're going to be translating words and symbols, and it might not seem like it's math, but it is really tied and is the foundation of geometry. And so there is some vocabulary. I gave you the definitions so we didn't have to write them all out. You could read through them, pause if you want to do that. But really, the things we need to know are what a statement is, truth value, and what negation means. A statement like this says is really just a sentence, and these sentences can be based about math, or they can just be, you know, any kind of sentence. The truth value is whether or not that statement or sentence is a true thing or if it's a false thing. And then if we take a statement and we give it the opposite meaning or the opposite truth value, that's called a negation. And so we're going to start just by writing the negation of a statement and then deciding if it's true. And some of these things are based in geometry, and if you don't know them already, that's okay. I can guide you on whether these things are true and false. This one says a rectangle has four right angles. Well, that is true. A lot of times we give statements the letters P and Q just to represent that statement. So we have the letter P here that represents a rectangle has four right angles. So the negation, we use the little squiggly as a negation instead of the minus sign, would be squiggly P. That's going to tell us we're going to talk about the opposite of this original statement. And so instead of a rectangle has four right angles, and I'm going to type to save video length time, we're going to say a rectangle doesn't have four right angles. We are giving this statement the opposite meaning. So if my first statement was true, my second statement is false. P and Q are the letters we often use. We can use other letters. So this statement represents Q, and this is a math statement, just -2 times -3 equals -6. So the negation of that would look like squiggly Q. And -2 times -3 does not equal -6. In fact, it equals +6. So this is false. And so if we write the negation of that, -2 times -3, and we would negate an equality by doing does not equal to, that would make this statement true. And I didn't say up here, or maybe I did, but I didn't write it, that this negation was false. So we're just changing the meaning, and that sometimes means we change has to doesn't have, or is to is not, or equals to not equals. And so what I want you to do right now is just pause right here. Please pause. And I want you to write the negation of the capital of Virginia is Richmond, and then see if you can decide if these things are true or false. So the original statement was true. And so if we wanted to negate that, we would say the capital of Virginia isn't Richmond. So we're going to negate it by changing is to isn't, which would create a false statement. We take those simple statements and sometimes we can link them together using these things called conjunctions and disjunctions. This looks like a lot of information. What we need to know is that this symbol right here, and I'll write it bigger, that we can make kind of look like a capital A, means the word and. And this symbol right here that looks like a V means the word or. So these are kind of like glue statements. They're bringing one statement and linking it or gluing it to another statement using the word and or the word or. And so you can know the words conjunction and disjunction if you want. That could be helpful. The most important thing is to know when I see this symbol, that like that I could simply turn into capital A, that means and. And so what I would do is I would take the statement that is P and I would put and in between it and the statement that is Q. So if I want to take my statements up here and write P and Q, this looks like P and Q. I could write an isosceles triangle has two equal angles, and I'm just going to do it in capitals. You don't have to. The circumference of a circle is, I'm going to say pi r because I can't type the pi symbol. In order for one of these and statements to be true, both of these original statements need to be true. So an isosceles triangle does have two equal angles. That's true. The circumference of a circle is not pi r. That's false. So we have a true statement and a false statement, which makes this entire compound conjunction false because only one piece is true. So I can't say this and this are true if one of them is false. Similarly, I can take P and I can use and to tie it to R. So an isosceles triangle has and I have some bad grammar. So an isosceles triangle we said does have two angles. That was true. A pentagon does have five sides. That's also true. So both of these pieces are true. We can call the whole thing true. I'm actually going to skip this one. What we would do is we would just do the negation of Q and whatever R is. So what I want you to do is I want you to pause here. I want you to try these two. If you need help, please ask, and then press play and check your answers. I want you to write what P and Q is in words using these two. And then I also want you to see if you can decide if the whole thing is true or not. I will tell you that January does have 30 days, and the perimeter of a polygon is the sum of its sides. So use those to help you determine the truth value. So hopefully you gave these a go and got what I wrote. If you didn't, please make sure you ask for help before you move on so we can fix any mistakes. The original statements were both true, so this conjunction is true. They're both true, so the whole thing is true. If I do the negation of a true statement, that makes it false, so not P is false. And so when I do this compound conjunction, I need them both to be true. They're not, so the whole thing is false. We can do the same thing with the disjunction, and this was supposed to say disjunction. That is the V, which means or. So we're going to link the two statements with the word or. And I'll go through and tell you which ones are true or not. This is false, this is true, and this is false. So we could write these together. Square root of negative 25 equals 5, or an acute angle, oops, that's the wrong one. A rhombus has 4 congruent angles. You might not know what congruent means. That's okay. You might not know what a rhombus looks like. That's okay too. But I told you that P was false and R was false. And this is saying P or R, we need at least one of them to be true for this whole thing to be true. And so since they're both false, this is an entirely false statement. If we do the next one, an acute angle measures less than 90, or Q is a true statement, an acute angle is less than 90 degrees. and then that second one was false. Since this is or, it doesn't mean they both need to be true. It just means one needs to be true. And so since Q is true, we can say that this disjunction, this compound statement, is still true. So just like you did with the previous ones, I want you to go ahead and press pause here. Please really pause and do these two problems on your own. It's okay if you don't get them right, but if you do get them wrong, please make sure that you ask for help. Go ahead, pause now, and try these two. So hopefully you were at least able to write these statements. I didn't tell you which of the two originals were false or true. So if you didn't know, that's okay. But a quadrilateral doesn't always have four equal sides, so that's false. And a square does always have four right angles, so that's true. So when I look at these, P or Q, false or true, that means I just need one of them to be true. So this whole compound disjunction is true. For this one, P was false. Q was true, but now we're doing the negation of true, which means we're changing its truth value to false. So this is a completely false statement. That does it for this lesson. There's practice to follow. Please make sure that you get any questions answered from this lesson before you go on to the practice. As you're practicing, please check your answers frequently. Don't do them all and then check when you're done. Please check after one or two so that if you do make a mistake, we can try and correct that mistake and you don't make it again as you move forward. Take your time on these and good luck.